So here's a wild idea for you. Did one of the lost tribes of Israel secretly make its way to America thousands of years ago? It's a huge claim, and it all boils down to one very mysterious ancient word. That's what we're going to dig into today. We're investigating the legend of Arzareth. Is this really some hidden name for America, locked away in an old text? Or is the real story something else entirely? A powerful myth that was born from a moment of absolute crisis. So, here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with the claim itself, then we'll decode the text it comes from and look at the pretty traumatic history that created it. After that, we'll follow the myth through time, see how it got tangled up with America, and then finally, we'll lay out the verdict. All right, let's dive right in. First things first, what is the claim exactly? Where is this whole idea even coming from? Believe it or not, this entire massive theory is built on this one single passage. It's from an ancient Jewish text called 2 Esdras, and it's talking about the 10 northern tribes of Israel who were exiled centuries before, deciding to up and move to some faraway, uninhabited land called Arzareth. For some people today, including some Hebrew Israelite groups, this is it. This is the smoking gun, the proof of an Israelite presence in the Americas long before Columbus. Okay, so that's the claim. But does the text actually back it up? I mean, really? Let's take a closer look at the actual passage and see what clues are hiding in plain sight. And right away, when you actually read the details, the whole America theory starts to run into some serious problems. First off, it says the journey starts by crossing the Euphrates River. That's in Iraq. Wrong continent. Then there's the travel time, a year and a half. That sounds specific, but in ancient writing, that's just kind of code for a super, super long way away. It's symbolic, not a GPS tracker. But here's the real kicker. The text says that when they eventually return from Arzareth, they'll have to cross the Euphrates again. Now, how does that make any sense if they were supposedly across the Atlantic Ocean? So when you boil it all down, the passage never, not once, mentions America or the New World or anything about crossing a giant ocean. It just says Arzareth. The idea that Arzareth is America, well, that's an interpretation that people added on way, way later. It doesn't actually come from the text itself. So if it's not a secret migration map, then what in the world is it? Well, to get that, we have to zoom out and look at the world this book came from. We have to understand the context, because this story wasn't written in a vacuum. It was born out of a moment of profound trauma. And scholars are pretty much all on the same page here. This book, for Ezra, wasn't written way back when the tribes were first exiled. Nope, it was written much later, around the year 100 CE. And the person writing it was reeling from something absolutely catastrophic. The Roman Empire had just completely destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem. So this wasn't some calm historian writing a textbook. This was a desperate cry from a people whose entire world had just been shattered. And that's why the type of book this is matters so, so much. It's a classic example of apocalyptic literature. Now, when you hear that word, you might think of end-of-the-world stuff, but really, it's a kind of writing that people turn to in a crisis. It's full of these wild visions and symbols, not because it's drawing a map, but because it's trying to make sense of overwhelming suffering. It's all about finding a glimmer of hope when things feel absolutely hopeless. You can almost hear the author crying out, right? Why did God let this happen? Are we abandoned? Is our covenant with God broken forever? And this vision of the lost tribes in some pure, faraway land, that's the answer. But it's a symbolic answer. It's a story of hope, a way of saying, don't despair. Somewhere out there, a faithful part of our people still exists, perfectly preserved, and one day we will be whole again. It's about spiritual survival, not a geography lesson. And this is a really key concept from that time. Writers often made a distinction between Jews, meaning the descendants from the southern kingdom of Judah, and Israel, which was this big, beautiful idea of all 12 tribes united again. For them, the story of the lost northern tribes wasn't just ancient history, it was a missing puzzle piece. The ultimate dream was the restoration of all Israel, and writing about the lost tribes was a powerful way of writing about that ultimate hope. So, if the original text wasn't about America at all, how on earth did the two ever get connected? Well, that's where the story of this myth takes a pretty incredible journey through time. All right, get ready for this, because this is kind of the whole key. The name Arzareth, it's probably not a real place name at all. Scholars are pretty convinced it's just a linguistic mistake, a corruption of a phrase from the Hebrew Bible, Eretz Ahareth,
which simply means another land. That's it. An ancient translator probably saw this common Hebrew phrase, didn't recognize it, and just wrote it down as if it were a proper name. So it was never meant to be a specific pin on a map.
In his fantastic book, the historian Zvi Ben-Dor Benite basically plays detective, tracking this lost tribe story through the centuries. And what he found is that they became this global myth history tradition. As the known world expanded, explorers and theologians would just keep relocating the tribes to the farthest, most mysterious places they could find on their maps. And this quote from him just nails it. No sooner were new terrains discovered than were the tribes relocated to them. It was this ongoing process of just fitting the geography to the story. So you see, the Americas weren't the original destination. They were just the last great unknown on the world map, a blank space where this ancient myth could be projected.
So that begs the question, right? Why did this myth find such fertile ground specifically in the United States? This leads us right to our next section, the projection of an American Zion.
In the early 1800s, this idea just explodes in America. Seriously, in 1816, a best-selling book argued that Native Americans were the descendants of the lost tribes. A few years later, a politician named Mordecai Noah tried to establish a Jewish refuge city in New York, and part of his argument was that it made sense because, hey, other Israelite tribes, the Native Americans, were already there. Before long, the theory became a really key part of American nationalism. But why was it so popular? Well, think about it. For the young United States, the idea of being a second Israel or a new Zion was an incredibly potent story. This theory offered a way to create a deep biblical history for a continent that, to European settlers, seemed to lack one. It served a powerful ideological purpose, helping to justify a sense of divine mission in the whole project of nation building. Okay, let's pull all of these threads together. It's time for our final section, the verdict, where we put myth-making up against history. When you step back and look at it, the Arzareth is America claim is really built on a few key fallacies. You've got anachronism, that's just reading a modern map back into an ancient symbolic world. You've got ignoring context, treating a piece of literature written out of trauma as if it were a travel guide. There's literalizing a metaphor, turning the simple name another land into a specific address. And finally, there's ideological projection, using this ancient story to fit a very modern need for identity. And this contrast really gets to the heart of the matter. The purpose of the ancient text was theological and symbolic. It was a story of hope for a community that was surviving a catastrophe. The modern claim is entirely different. It's a search for identity that needs a literal, physical location on a map. The two are asking completely different things from the very same story. In the end, the story of Arzareth is just a fascinating window into how myths are born and how they travel through history. And it leaves all of us with a much bigger question to think about. When we read these texts from the ancient world, are we truly listening to their story, or are we just trying to make them tell our own?